We're not going to screw around right now. We're just going to go ahead and get into it. Yeah, that'll work. All right, cool. So, I am talking to Shay Trask. Is that the way to say your name?
Yep.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome.
So, I've been following you a little bit, and I looked at your Instagram, and it appears that you went from Z06 Realtor to Shay Trask.
I did. So the Z06 got sold last week.
Ooh, okay.
Yep.
Big announcement, or...
Yeah, it's been kind of a slow one. I haven't really, done anything crazy, announced it or anything, but kind of resetting with all the C8 talk coming out and a few other fun cars in the mix. I just haven't had as much time for it. I've been in the Jeep a lot more with work and everything, so decided it was time to part ways with the C7 and kind of get prepared for possibly a C8, or I might wait for the C8 Z06 too, or whatever the equivalent's going to be with the 5.5 liter V8 in it with the flat plane crank, which should be pretty sweet.
Oh man, if they can do that. I was looking at specs the other day because my buddy and I were joking around like, oh, I should get one of those.
Yeah.
May happen. But I, much like you, or I was looking at that. Hold on. It was, let's see. God, Instagram is just full of stuff. David. Here we go. Okay, so you have the base and then the flat plane 600 horsepower, a twin turbo V8. Not sure if that's going to be an overhead valve or flat plane 800, and then a twin turbo V8 plus electric at 1,000.
Yeah. Yep.
That's silly.
Yeah, and it seems like a practical possibility, though, with the way they've been rolling out the car. I mean, the base Corvette already has 500 horsepower, so...
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you're getting up into pretty easy numbers for, pushing to 600 to 700 for the next one, pushing 700 plus for the next one, and then you add electric, and that's a whole nother ball game. And they have plenty of room with the frunk up there that, if you take up some of that room and make it a real, Zora sports cars are talking, I would not be shocked for an all-wheel drive type system and 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow.
Which then you have to be thinking 0 to 60 in 2 seconds flat.
Oh, man.
If the C8 base is doing it in 2.8 seconds.
I would almost say you have there'd be a limitation on the mechanicals of the car to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Can a piston move? And obviously we know it can, but can you get a piston to move that quickly and transfer that much torque, through a transmission and everything in 2 seconds?
Yeah. And that's where the electric motor, I think, will help a bunch, because the Tesla Roadster is claiming 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds.
That's right.
And that's all electric, though.
And, yeah, that's ludicrous plus.
It's crazy. I wouldn't be shocked eventually it's coming an electric Corvette. I don't think it'll be in the C8 realm of things, but I'm sure it'll be C9.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think the timeline is on that?
On the C8s?
Yeah. Well, the iterations.
Well, with GM Strike, if they get everything figured out, they can start building cars. But I'm already guessing that the release of just the Stingray is 2 months behind schedule.
Yeah.
And then, as far as I know from the racing series, I think since the C8R has that flat plane crank motor,
yep.
I think they have to come out with at least 300 production cars.
Yep.
With that motor in it, or a variant of that motor, within a year, I think.
Yeah,
is that the rule?
Yeah, it's a rule.
So that's where my hope is, that the C8 Z06 or the equivalent of it is going to have that motor in it, is the the race car having it in it.
I mean, if they release the race car, I would say that they have the factory already tuned to do all that. And and maybe they've already put them out and they're just sitting on them.
Yeah, that could be.
Because, I mean, that's risky. Like, you hear stories from back in the day when, God, I can't remember what company it was. What they did was, this was on Top Gear. It might have been Audi. Yeah, it was Audi. They had, like, the guys from FIA or whatever at the time come in and look at the cars, and they kind of wine and dined them. And they're like, oh, here's, 100 cars or 50 cars. And then they were like, oh, we have to drive over to this other place. And then they would stop off and, go look at something. And, again, wining and dining. Well, they had everyone from the factory move those cars to a different location.
Really? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it was on a Top Gear.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they got away with it.
Wow.
But, I mean, in racing in general, I mean, if you can cheat, you do it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, based off your Instagram, your Durango hood, that's factory, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I was watching some stuff on Trackhawks and things the other day from the Jeep SRT side.
Yeah.
What do you think about that and the looks of it?
The SRT or the Durango?
On the Jeep side, like I was watching a video where the guy he had a Trackhawk and he loves the Trackhawk, and I don't blame him. It's fast, and I just have an SRT.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pull up a Trackhawk next to a stock SRT,
yeah, there's no difference.
There's no difference, and actually, like, they got rid of some of the LEDs down below that I think are the fog lights for the SRT. And, like, just a simple example of how cool your hood is on your Durango.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that they couldn't even do that for the Jeep, and why they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I know when the Trackhawk was coming out, I heard a lot of like rumblings about that, how it looks too similar, and why not put like the Viper hood on it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think they missed the mark on that. I don't know. It's really unfortunate because that platform is insane.
It is.
An SRT Jeep is not cheap. An SRT Durango is not cheap. But a Trackhawk, at the way that it should be spec'd out, is $104,000.
Yeah.
Like, if I ever spent $104,000 on a Jeep, I would want someone to punch me square in the dick. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, that's just silly.
Have you driven one yet?
I have. And don't get me wrong, it's great. It's fun. But I would much rather have the Durango because, it's a little bit slower. I mean, it's slower.
Yeah.
But I can have 6 passengers, and I can haul 8,700 pounds, and it costs $30,000 less.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, for $30,000, you could get a Hellcat engine and put it in the Durango.
Yeah. Well, and where I'm at, like, so just from the SRT side, you're at the same thing. You have the 6.4 in yours, right?
Correct.
So you can find a supercharger for $8,000 and have it installed for under 10, and you'll be making more power than a Trackhawk does. Which, don't get me wrong, I love the Trackhawk because I'm a big stock guy. I leave most of my stuff stock and because of warranty issues. So
of course.
I thought a Trackhawk would be great, but I went to go trade in my 2014, and so 14 had all the updates for the Jeep where they did the new headlights, taillights, interior, all that stuff.
Yep.
And so it looks similar, really, really similar to the brand new ones that are out today. Like I just saw somebody with a 2020 and the front grill's a little different and the shifter's a little different.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And then I went to go look at trading in for a Trackhawk. And at the time they were still brand new to where you're at $100,000 for the Trackhawk. and they were looking at giving me like 45 for my Jeep at the time to trade in. And so I was going to spend $55,000 to literally just have a little bit different grill.
Yep.
And a supercharger, which my Jeep says, like on the little tack thing, it says it'll do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat, and it does it pretty regularly. And the new Trackhawk will do it in like 3.2, 3.3.
Yep.
And so I'm like, you want me to spend $55,000 to go 0.7 seconds faster, 0 to 60? I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, when I was looking at the Durango, I like jokingly said, hey, the Trackhawk's coming out. Why don't I see what it costs to build? And of course the sales guy's like, oh yeah. All right, sweet, cool. And like we sit down and I start going through it and I just have my head in my hands and I'm like, are you serious? I mean, it's still a Jeep. I could go out and buy a used Porsche and like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just at that reveal tonight, and those cars are going up too. Like everything seems to be going up. The new 911, it was a convertible.
Yep.
And it was the one on the floor was silver with the dark blue, and it was at $164,000.
Yeah, every single iteration of these cars goes up between $10,000 and $20,000.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It seems to be getting more and more.
Well, and if you look at automotive manufacturers, like especially exotics, less so domestic, fortunately domestic is stabilizing because they're broke, but, or they claim to be. But the thing is, like, for how much marketing and promotions and all this stuff, like there is so much cost loaded into that vehicle. I would say an acquisition cost on something like a Trackhawk or a Porsche, and Porsche's probably even way higher, but it's got to be between, I don't know, I'd say like 2 to 10,000. I know that's a wide gap, but all the marketing and all the giveaways and all the promotions and all the events, like,
yeah.
I mean, think of all the salaries and then engineering and I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where I think Corvette hit a home run with their recent reveal. Is they basically used all of us in the social media just to like announce the car in itself. I mean, putting the car out with the date on the side of it so everybody knows the date without actually really saying much.
Yep.
Like I don't think I've seen a Corvette commercial on TV.
No, not at all.
I mean, they have to be saving millions of dollars with social media and just a very strategic release of everything. And I think they've done a great job, like whoever their marketing team is, of only releasing like little bits at a time and just controlling when stuff comes out. And it seems like every month since that reveal, maybe even every 2 weeks, there's been something leaked or revealed about the car that then gets people excited again. Like this last week has been the Motor Trend deal where it claimed to be 0 to 60 in like 2.9 and Motor Trend says it's 2.8. And they claim the quarter mile in like 11.4, 11.3, and Motor Trend says it's 11.1. So like everybody's pushing this huge hype right now in Corvette forums about, the Corvette's even better than we thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they kind of took a lesson from, I wouldn't say the Italians, but, Fiat Chrysler, that the way that they handled the release of like the red eye and, I mean, the Trackhawk was kind of like that, but definitely like the red eye, the wide body, they definitely leveraged that. And I think they, Corvette or Chevy, because Corvette, I think, is its own team inside of Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they took, some notes from them, and they were like, "Hey, we could really take this and make it explode."
Yeah. Well, you even remember when the Hellcat came out? I mean, just go back to the original 707 horsepower when we thought that was crazy. Like,
yeah,
that is crazy to just think that that's. I mean, I'm not saying a Hellcat's a standard vehicle by any means, but really, I was just looking the other day. You can pick up a Hellcat for under $50,000 pretty regularly for a used one. And it's like, could you, like, saying that 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, saying you'd get 700 horsepower with warranty for 50 grand. I mean, that it seems insane, but that's kind of become not normal, but like, and that's even more of a base car because now they're up to 790 something or, 800. And then the Demon kind of comes out with 1,000 and you get all that hype again. It's pretty cool.
I think it's awesome. I think also the scariest part is, have you driven on a track, like you race at all?
Yeah, with the Z06 I did.
Okay. So take all the experience. Have you done autocross or road racing? What's the...
A little bit of everything. I've done some of the SCCA stuff where they just set up cones.
Yep.
I did Road America once, like didn't go really hard there, but was on it.
Yep.
And then did some like road rally stuff where we closed down some roads and did some more fun type things.
That's definitely something I want to get into, so we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a blast.
I that's like a goal. I gotta
but it
get
gets
into
expensive.
I mean, I understand that. I might know some companies that might want to sponsor it. So
yeah, that's a great way to do it. I've never done it like that, but I have a few friends that did it like that, and they loved it. It's a great experience because you get to share it, take some of the cost away, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. So the scary thing is having this experience that you and I have on the track and driving cars fast, especially into turns, etc. Imagine 18-year-old kid goes into dealership, says, "Hey, I want to buy $50,000 Hellcat." Cool, we'll get you approved. He gets some like insane interest rate, like 10-14%, and all of a sudden he has the keys to a car that has 707 horsepower. Has no idea what he's doing, and then wraps around a tree. Or that's, to me, what the scary part is, because the general public, and I'm pointing to every single person that drives in the left lane and doesn't move to the right. They have no clue what that means, what power there is there, and how quickly it can get away from you, even if you're trained to use it.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I drove my Z06, I wasn't even going to buy it. I loved my Jeep. It was so much fun. And I had a base C6 for a little bit that ended up giving to my dad because he loved it so much. And to me, it wasn't like a super thrill, because if we lined up the C6 in my Jeep anywhere on a straight road, the Corvette or the Jeep would beat it. But I went and test drove the Z06. My buddy's dad owned a dealership, and I took it out on the street and didn't like give it full throttle because, again, like, I respect the vehicle until I know it.
Yeah, so it's like dating.
Yeah, you got to just dip your toe in the water, see where it goes, and eventually, you get into it further. And it was the first car that, like, I had driven that literally scared me when I, like, gave it a little too much. And it was one of those things, like you said, where, like, I went back to my one buddy. He's like, "How fast you got it up to?" I'm like, "Not that fast. Like, I'm going slowly into this because I don't know what this thing can do." And it can be terrifying when you get to that much power.
Yep, absolutely. I have a Z51 2LT, and I've done some work to it, and I had it up to, I think, 100. It was between 170 and 185. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Someone's going to say that, oh, there's a limiter or whatever. I think it was 182.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I think they are around that. And if you've done anything to it, I think it's pretty easily. I know I've had mine in the 170s numerous times on closed roads, of course.
Yeah. But I think it was, like, super stable. But at the same time, like, you're a deer walking out in front of you, away from just destroying everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I like, if I get up to something like that, it's very quickly and then back down to normal speeds. But it amazes me. I had this speed limit. Actually, this talk, it was actually with my mom, which is weird because she doesn't really drive fast and she's not into cars. But She picked me up from the airport one time and said that she was late, traffic, whatever. And we started talking about speed limits. And one of the weirdest things to me is if you look at a car that's 25 to 30 years old, driving 100 miles an hour, that's kind of scary. But if you hop in any C7, even any C6 Corvette, I mean, or any my mom drives an Altima, and her Altima at 100 miles an hour does not feel that crazy. Although our speed limits have basically remained the same for 50 years.
Yep.
It just seems really weird to me.
Well, I think, do you watch any of, how do you say his last name? Casey Pooch?
No, I don't.
Stuff? I mean, he just had a YouTube, like he's coming out with YouTube stuff now, and he's been on VinWiki. He just came out with a video podcast or something, and he was talking about that. He's like, okay, he was driving in his Viper in Ohio, and he was talking about how he's going to be in the left lane and to watch all the people that don't move. And he was making your exact point by saying, hey, our speed limits have not changed. Our cars are capable of this speed. What's, what's the hindrance here? I think we have, and this is my opinion, but we have a lot of aging infrastructure that people don't know how to handle. You hit a pothole at 100 miles an hour and it could go wrong.
That's true.
That's a huge problem with, I would say, the politics of our country and trying to resolve that. Because if you go to Germany, their roads are pretty much beautiful once you get outside of the cities. Some of the cities are a little cobbly.
Yeah.
You have that. And then the other key component is our driving as a country is shit. Like, no one gets taught how to drive. I really think they need to make it like a mandatory defensive driving class. You have to take tests every 3 to 5 years, and you have to be qualified in obstacle avoidance. Basically, like, I wouldn't say stunt driving to that extreme, but I don't know. Like, have you ever done a braking simulator where you have 3 sets of stoplights? And there's
I haven't.
Okay. So you have 3 sets of stoplights, and you have to accelerate up to 40 or 60 miles an hour headed towards those lights. And you'll have an instructor shut off 2 of those lights and switch them to red. And you have to enter the lane that's green. So.
Oh, yeah, I get you.
So, like, by the time you hit, I think you're, 10 or 20 feet away from it, you have to be able to avoid both of those or, stay in the center lane, go left, go right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great tool. I mean, I screwed up and I stalled the car that I was driving multiple times, but it just shows you that somebody that is somewhat skilled could still screw that up.
Yeah.
So you put a semi in the middle lane and you put somebody going super slow, something happens, people hit the brakes and you have to go around them. Like, if you can't do that, you're going to kill everyone behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, when we talked on the way back, was the speed limit thing, I think should only be on certain roads, like major roads across the country. But it's you get to Nebraska and some of the flyover states that, nobody really goes to, and you'll go, 10 miles without an exit. And it's is there really a lot of danger in that, the pothole thing is real. I think that's a huge deal, even deer and stuff. But I mean, I'm not talking, we should put the speed limits at 100, but in Iowa, a lot of the roads are still 65 and 65 is crawling. When you're in a car even any car, I'm talking your everyday Altima and your Toyota Camry can easily do 80 miles an hour and not feel scary.
Dude, Chicago is 55.
That's crazy.
Unreal. And I honestly think it's because of the tax base and being able to, just pay the ticket, not care about it. And, the money that the municipalities or the state receives from that.
Yeah. Well, and something that was cool in Iowa lately, they just introduced a black license plate.
Yep.
And so on my Instagram, if you look, like a long time ago, I put on black plates, and they're from this little college called Dordt College. And it's like 1,500 people graduate from there a year, so nobody goes there.
Yep.
But it was a loophole to get black plates, so I got these Dordt College ones. And it started to catch on, and more people started getting this Dordt College because people would see it. And, like, out of everything I've ever done to my cars, I was just telling somebody this the other day, that's the number one thing people have commented on about my cars. They always were like, where'd you get a black license plate at? Like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I pull up in a nice car, and it's like, that's the thing you're going to comment on? And it was just always funny to me. And I actually moved down to Florida last October, and shortly after that, they announced they were coming out with a black license plate finally after like 7 years of me using these Dordt College plates instead. And they came out July 1st, and I believe they've sold over 17,000 black license plates since it came out in July.
Now, is there like any special motivation to that, or is it just because it's black?
Just because it's black. And they've actually been doing some news articles on it and stuff, and like interviewing random people, and literally like people that don't love cars, they just walk in and their choice is a white license plate with bright blue and bright green on it, or it's a black and white license plate. And it seems like people don't care a ton what their car looks like, but if they can get a black license plate that just kind of looks good on the car, it seems like people are paying for it. And especially in a state where you have to have it on the front and the back, you don't want a big old ugly license plate on there. And that's a whole nother argument, is why we have front and back plates. If you're trying to save money and save the environment and all this stuff that every state claims they're doing, I don't understand the front license plate. It seems like a very simple way to save a lot of money and not really change a whole lot.
Well, I mean, they make money at it, so why change it if that makes them money? I have red plates because I have Blackhawks plates. And
nice.
The only reason why I went with that, like, I am a Blackhawks fan, obviously. I live in Chicago.
Yeah.
But the only reason why I went with it was because the calipers on the car, it's white. I could have gotten socks, but I'm not a Sox fan. That could be black. But I was like, oh, I could, kind of set off the car with the red plates.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could get black plates for the Corvette, I would, but I'm probably going to be like you and sell it soon. So,
yeah. Well, and it's weird that a lot of cars, no matter what color the car is, normally where the license plate is, not normally, but a lot of times, it's black right there. Like even the white Corvette where your license plate actually is black.
Yeah, the frame is black.
Yeah, and even like that lower valance, I think, is all black.
Yep.
So it's one of those plates where like I didn't want to like be a rebel or do anything crazy. I was just like, I want to have my license plate on the car, but I just want it to look good.
Yeah. I ended up, because with the Z51, I replaced the front grille with a Z06 style grille.
Nice.
Which that was a pain. I would never recommend doing that. The parts are cheap. I got the grill for $100, but it took me like 4 hours to disassemble the front end.
Yikes.
But the license plate bracket, they actually recommend that you take it off when you track the car.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I switched to the Z06 grill, I was like, no, this isn't going to work. So I got one of those tow hook license plate frames, which is fine. I just think they stick out way too far.
Yeah.
I bend my license plate like parking my car in my garage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
dang. Yeah, I never put mine on. I actually never put a front plate on the Corvette. I couldn't do it. I thought about it several times. I'm like, you know what? I don't drink and drive in it or do anything like that. So I'm like, if they want to pull me over, that's fine. I'll talk to them. And if I want to get a ticket, it's worth it because I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah. I got the front of I basically got the entire Durango repainted, but I had him take the plate off, like the front mounting plate off, when they painted it, and I lost the front plate somewhere, and I was like, screw it, I'll leave it off. But of course, Chicago being Chicago, I ended up getting, I think, 2 tickets for it, and like you can park your car and they're going to write you a ticket for no front plate.
Wow.
And it's $60 a hit. So I was like, all right, fine.
Okay, so that's how they make the money on it, because they don't pull people over very often for it in Iowa, but in Chicago, I bet it's a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to have I don't want to give them an excuse to pull me over.
Yeah,
and
there's just no point.
Yeah, you could use that. I feel like I'm a pretty law-abiding citizen. Here and there, I have some fun.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, I don't want to attract any unnecessary attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of the time when you get pulled over and you don't have a front plate, it just starts the whole encounter off on the wrong foot.
Yeah. And then we're going to add this, and then you got this problem. So I'm going to do you a favor. Great. Now you're doing me a favor. Cool.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love and respect law enforcement for sure.
Yeah, same.
But sometimes it's an interesting dialogue.
Yeah.
I've had great success and really good conversations when I have gotten pulled over that usually end in my benefit.
Yeah.
But the times that I don't, I can really tell that it's mostly the officer I'm talking to. It takes all kinds. So
yeah, I mean, you find a nice car guy kind of officer, and that's, you normally get off with stuff, and they're, good friends, and you almost add them on Facebook before they go back to their car. And you're like, hey, add me on Instagram type of thing. And then you get other ones that they just do not care. And that always seems to be the ones where you get tickets are the ones that, like, literally do not care what you're driving. But I had a really high one that I almost got in Chicago when I had my Corvette, and I actually had it all rallied up with stickers and everything. And I was shaking when I got pulled over, and even told my buddy, I'm like, hey, we're probably going to impound the car and take it away. And I was all by myself on a road, but just bad timing.
We're going to jail.
I basically told him that. I'm like, hey, so if he takes me in, like, just take the keys, go, take the car to the hotel, and I'll meet you tomorrow type of thing. And the officer comes up, and at first he was kind of strict and stuff, and then he was like, this is E06? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, I love this car. He's like, I used to have cars like this when I was young, and it's like, I used to actually drive a little bit like you when I was young too. And we both kind of laughed in the car, and he's like, don't worry, I'm not giving you a ticket, but do not catch you driving like that again, and all that stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Now, was that a Chicago cop or a state trooper?
It was a Chicago cop.
Yeah. Chicago cops, I don't know, like, there's just this odd camaraderie, and I wouldn't even call it odd. I mean, there's this good camaraderie. My interaction with the CPD has been fantastic. I mean, the dialogue's great. Once I get a state trooper that's in the city, usually on 90-94, see, now I'm like painting a target on my back. I don't know what it is, but like I could be doing, 10 over, which again, I understand is uncouth, but I'm getting pulled over.
Yeah.
And it's because the exhaust, granted, the Durango tinted out, I probably look like I'm up to, something. I get it. So at that point, they probably just want to make it worth their while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. And especially when you're in a rally, I can't imagine that if you're with a group of people, you're kind of asking for it.
Yeah, we've seen both sides of it. Like, most of the time, our rally was a Crown rally, and they do the North, they do Central, so they spend a lot of time around Chicago, and like we even had police escorts out of Chicago. So it seems like a lot of the officers kind of know what we're doing, and so like that time we got pulled over, when we were talking to them for a while, we brought up the whole idea that a lot of the money goes to charity. We drive spirited is the word that we use for parts of it, but like there's always a front rally where it says, hey, we're going to drive fun, have a good time. But when you're around small cities, when you're around traffic lights, like anything like that, I mean, we seem like we have a handicap sticker in there and we're completely law-abiding citizens times,
totally
125%. Like our biggest thing is the first time anybody gets hurt or somebody's in major danger, like that shuts down the whole thing for everybody. And so a few people take it as a rally can be these cars just zipping through the country with, all reckless the entire way. And it's like, that's the furthest thing from what we do.
Yeah. At that point, you just strip the stickers off their car and just say, you're not welcome next year.
Yeah.
Especially if you get caught. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, like you said, spirited. But, just don't be an idiot.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And we actually have had a few people that are not invited back, and it's a very humbling thing. We got to one checkpoint last year, and they just said, "Hey, there's a few people that won't be with us tomorrow. We found out about a few things, and we've asked them to leave." And so it's a very humbling thing to know that these rallies do take that stuff seriously, because we all want to be safe, and especially crossing yellow lines and stuff like that. And then you get to crosswalks, blowing stoplights, things like that. We don't do any of that stuff because we understand how dangerous it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You have no idea. And then all of a sudden mom's walking a stroller across the street. Some Lamborghini comes flying through, boom, done, over. And then, the first thing on the news is, we wanted to be a charitable organization, raise money for a good cause. And all of a sudden our name's getting out there as, tied up in this situation because some idiot that's not really involved.
Exactly. And we've had great success at not having any of that come up. So knock on wood right now. But we've had some awesome people involved with it, and there's normally 100 to 150 cars in the rally, and people have done great at, having fun, but doing it in a very reasonable manner, even down to not doing burnouts in spots where you're not supposed to. We rent out racetracks for things like that and have a lot of fun in certain parking lots that we're designated to. But, overall, it's just a lot of business people who love cars, who want to see other people that, own cars in that same realm and bring everybody together and have a ton of fun, and then also donate to a good cause.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's awesome. Definitely something I want to get into.
Yeah, you should. And they're fairly easy to get into right away. When I said earlier they're kind of expensive to do, it's more for me last time. I was actually living in Florida, so I had to go all the way to Chicago, then back to Tennessee, and then back down here.
Yeah.
But if you live in Chicago or even in Minneapolis or near one of the starting cities, it really is a pretty easy way to go. And I think they're a couple grand to get in, but that includes your hotels, that includes all the rally setup, stuff like that, and it's a ton of fun.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'd be down for that. I think I looked into doing Crown last year, and I think the issue was it was either sold out or it was invite only.
Yeah, so they do. Crown Rally is an invite only. Basically, it sells out so fast that they are kind of wanting I hate to say it, but cooler and cooler cars on the rally. So
of course.
Each year you start to see that, there's less of, certain types of cars, and there's more Lamborghinis, McLarens, Ferraris, and I don't think they'll ever fill it with that because there's so many enthusiasts yet that, they don't want them all to be that. Yeah. But it is cool to see that because it's basically a car show on wheels when you pull up to a city and there's these little kids that never get to see a Lamborghini go by.
The carnival came to town.
Yeah, exactly. Can't tell you how many times we're driving through Tennessee and stuff like that, and you go by and there's, the Lambo goes by and even the Z06 and then a Ferrari, and you just see these people's heads turn and their mouths are dropped wide open. And they it's like they saw a ghost run by.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's fun.
Do you know what charities that the money goes to, or Is
The
that just
main one's the Epilepsy Foundation.
okay?
So
Cool.
that is the main one, and then they've started to do a few others on the sides. It's all on
Yeah.
their website if anybody wants to check it out, just crownrally.com, and then
Cool.
they're all over Facebook, Crown Rally, and they're doing 3 events this year. There's a South one, which is going to be 10, which will be their anniversary run.
Yep.
And that'll do like Tail of the Dragon, which,
Ooh.
have you ever been on that?
No, I want to.
Yeah, it's a blast. I've been on it 5 times in the past 2 years. The Z06 3 times, the Jeep once, and then I actually rented a Slingshot the last time I was on it, which was a lot of fun. But if you ever get to that, it's 318 turns and 11 miles, and it is a blast.
Wow.
But they're actually doing that as part of the rally this year. And then they have one from, I believe they're doing Minneapolis to Chicago again, going like through Milwaukee maybe.
Okay.
And then the last one is Pikes Peak, actually out near Colorado. So, and that one ends in Vegas. So if there's anybody out towards the west side, like Kansas City and stuff, like that is going to be an awesome run.
Yeah. How do I just do all of those?
Get a really good sponsor and you're in.
That all sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty good time.
Oh man. So moving on to the C8. So you got rid of the Z06. You have the SRT Jeep still because they wouldn't give you enough money for it.
Yeah, and honestly, I still love the thing. Like, the interior is not enough of a difference for me to trade. So I'm like, it's a 14 with 42,000 miles, and it's got everything done just the way I wanted. So, yeah, and I mean, I've kept 26,000 miles off it the last 2 years because I had the Corvette. I drove it a ton.
Yep.
So I actually put a deposit down on a Rivian. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of those before?
No.
So they're a new all-electric truck and SUV that's coming out.
Yeah. Okay.
They're backed by Ford and Amazon right now. Not fully backed, but Ford gave them $500 million and Amazon gave them $700 million. And then Amazon put in an order for 100,000 vans when they're building vans. So they've got a pretty secure line of business moving forward. But the truck does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and has a range of over 400 miles.
Oh, wow.
So I put a deposit down on that, but that's not going to be here till the end of 2020 at the earliest. And most people get them like early 2021.
Okay.
So I think that's the plan for the Jeep. But then on the other side of stuff, I don't know 100% what I'm going to do yet for a fun car because I went and test drove a Viper 2 days ago. And I love that thing just because it's, you know, it's a Viper is a Viper. It's a V10, it's a 6-speed, and it has basically no traction control. So it's a driver's car. If you have one, you pay attention. Mm-hmm. So I'm either thinking about doing that route for a while and just to have a fun car that I don't really think they'd appreciate too much when you get an 05-ish area one.
Yeah, it's not a big risk.
Yeah, I think they stay pretty steady and just buy it right and buy a clean one and take care of it. But I do think that C8 with all the numbers coming out on it and the fact that the convertible can lower the top at up to 30 miles an hour and still looks crazy good. And they also said the structure of it with the new roll bar behind the seats that supposedly it can go on almost every single track that the coupe can.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the way that roll bar is designed in the new convertible. Whoever the general manager for Corvette was saying that was track approved. So we'll see if that's true or not. But
I did catch, as I was falling asleep last night, I did catch someone talking to that guy. I think his name's Pete or something. He did say that they designed the car first without the roof. So they wanted to build the structure, and then they'll add whatever they need on top of that.
Yeah, because if you look at it, I mean, it's the way the C7's been done too, because of that our roof's coming out. I mean, there is no such thing as a fully hardtop Corvette since 2014.
Really?
because every single one has a target top
Oh, that's true.
or a convertible. So, like, I mean, that's just kind of cool that they've been doing that for a while, that, you know, even our hard top is still the roof's removable. And there's, as far as my knowledge, I don't believe they make one that doesn't open.
Yeah. No, I don't think they do.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool that you can, you know, no matter what Corvette you're doing, even if you take the roof out one day a year in your hardtop, and I know a guy that bought a brand new ZR1, and I don't know if he's ever taken the roof out, which is fine, but it's just cool that you kind of have the option.
When I bought the Corvette, it was kind of on a whim, and I bought it in December. The end of this was it the end of December? I don't know. It was earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I bought it was because I got a great deal on it. And, you know, it just kind of sat. I didn't really drive it because it was cold. And then took it out this summer. And there were a couple times I'm like, the sun's like, this is great. And so I would take the top off, throw it in the back, have my golf clubs, whatever in it. And I developed this hilarious tan, which I never had before. And it, like, I just call it the Corvette tan, where like, it was like the left side of my body was just like smoked always, and I had this like hilarious transition where my shirt stopped, and where it would just like naturally go up to with the wind, and it was like a gradient over my skin, so it was like red all the way to like kind of just like pale Irish white.
That's hilarious. I know what you mean though. I mean that the convertible / like, you know, roof out. You get a lot of sun that you just don't realize you're getting.
No, and you could be cruising on the highway. You feel like, you know, not cold, but, you know, you feel good. And then all of a sudden you stop and you look at your forehead and it's just baked.
Yep.
Oof.
It gets pretty rough driving those Corvettes without a roof. It's a rough life.
It's a real rough life, you know.
First world problems.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, but it is. I think it's a super cool thing that they did since 2014. I think it's a game changer, and to be able to do it again in the C8, I just think it's a huge selling point for anybody. You know, I love convertibles. I always have. My first car was a Z28 Camaro convertible when I was a kid, and you know, is a great car. And for some reason, I like convertibles because I like to push a button and have the roof off, and it's nice that even with a coupe, I could still do that when you wanted to. It's not quite as convenient, but it's still pretty dang convenient.
Yeah. How did you have a Camaro in Iowa?
So I did have a second car for part of that. I'd been working. I wanted an IROC Z28 when I was about 7 or 8 years old. My neighbor had one, and he was in high school at the time, and it was a blue one. And so I had this picture in a magazine that I cut out, and I hung up in my room, and it was like a pristine one was like $12,000 at the time. And I was like, how do I get $12,000 in the next 6 years before I, like, you know, turn 14 and get my first car? And I'd already been saving up. My parents always did a thing where, like, I told them one time I wanted a Nintendo, and they said, well, here's a Nintendo for $100, so all you have to do is mow a lawn 33 times for $3, and you get $99. It's close, so mow it 34 times, and you can go buy yourself a Nintendo. And they always set stuff like that for me. And the Camaro was the exact same. That they said, hey, if you want to buy that car, it's great. Like, we'll let you do it. Because my mom really didn't want me to get a Corvette, and she didn't really understand that the Z28 had the Corvette motor in it. But Dad did, and he was fine with that. Yeah. It was a great loophole for me, and it sat 4 people, which was fun for a high school car because it would suck only having 2 people in a car. But back then, I mean, high school days. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun, but they just basically told me to work for it, and somehow I came up with the money before I was 14, and they were kind of shocked that I actually did. I remember my dad was like, do you really have enough to buy that car? And I was like, yeah, I think we can. And he's like, all right, like, that's what you want. And so went and bought that, and took forever to shop. By the time it actually got there, I didn't get an IROC. I got a newer than that Z28, and I think it was only like 10 grand at the time when I ended up buying it, but
yep,
it was a lot of fun. But in Iowa, it was not a great car. I'm trying to think what happened. I think my parents had like an extra SUV, and somehow it was like an old Durango. And somehow I think I weaseled my way into driving that for the winter so I didn't have to drive the Camaro.
Well, that was just
and
smart.
Then, yeah, I don't remember how that worked. I think we had an extra SUV at the time, and they just said, hey, you can drive this. I don't think the Camaro's going to make it well in the winter, and that worked out really well. I was like in position A where I got to drive a car that I didn't have to pay for. I thought I was in heaven. That was great.
Oh, man. Well, good on your parents for teaching you that you had to work for it.
What was your first car?
Oh, man. All right. So, my parents did give me a car.
Well, that's all right. Like I told somebody today, we had a talk. He's got a Viper, and he's only 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he said, sometimes he gets made fun of, or, people are mean because they're like, what do you know? It's daddy's money, whatever. But I know the kid personally, and he's doing a ton of business ventures with his dad. He's working all the time, still going to college while he's working full time.
Yep.
And I'm like, there's some kids that get a silver spoon and start their life off, and then they throw it all away. Yep. And there's other kids that get a silver spoon and they go to town and they start eating. And when they start eating with that silver spoon and they start making good business decisions, it's amazing where their life can go.
Yeah, and the impact that it has on other people's lives, because now they're building capital and downstreaming it.
Yeah.
So my first car was a Ford Explorer Eddie Bauer edition.
Nice.
I think it had like 90,000 miles on it. Definitely not getting new cars.
Yeah. No.
I ended up sending a rod through that block.
We had a nickname, called them the Exploders when we were in high school.
My dad had several of them. One of them caught fire in my friend's driveway. Tons of problems with those cars. And then I had 2 Chevy Blazers, totaled both of those.
That's where you learn to drive.
Well, some guy pulled out in front of me, and I was doing like 40 miles an hour in a 40 mile per hour zone. This guy pulled out in front of traffic. It was 2-lane road. Traffic was piled up in the left lane. I was in the right lane, and it was open. And this guy just came shooting across, and I just owned him.
Wow.
And when the cops showed up, I was laughing. And they're like, "Are you okay? Like, you seem hysterical. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I just got this car to the point that I was happy with it." I was like, "Everything's great. I put the tires and the lift kit. I got everything going." And all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, that sucks.
But my favorite car was my mom had a CLK 320 Mercedes. It was a 99. Nice. And I love that car because she would even take it on the highway off ramps, and she would just hammer on it. Like, she's like, "Oh, when they say, you got to do 35 miles an hour on that off ramp, they mean it." I'm like, "Well, you can push it a little bit, but there's a reason why that number's there."
That's funny. That's awesome.
So, that was a convertible. So I got treated to the convertible life a little bit too. There were a lot of antics that happened, especially in the winter, and I would take that car out. It'd be 12 degrees outside, and we'd see how long we could drive with the top down, how long we'd last. And it was nice because there's like a little aerodynamic bubble that would fill in. So if you turn the heat on high and just lean forward towards the windshield, you're good.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. I'll never forget it. We were driving my Camaro, and it was right before it started to snow because I knew I didn't want it to see salt. Yeah. But it was cold out that day, and me and my buddy had stocking caps on, and we were going to meet some girls in downtown somewhere. it was like we wanted to have the top down when we showed up. And so we had stocking caps on, coats, and the roof was down, and it was 40-some degrees. It was so cold.
Yep.
But like you said, you turn the heat on, and it's great in there.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's almost kind of nice to get that cold air, you know, hit the back of your head. You're like, oh, that's refreshing.
It's like sitting in a hot tub when it's snowing out.
Yep. God, yeah, that was a great car. Just hilarious stuff. I would, I think the statute of limitations is gone. But what I would do, I could stand up in the car and I would set cruise control. And I would only be going down, like, we have this long stretch of road that doesn't have a stop sign.
Yeah.
And it would be like, you know, midnight. And I'd be on my way home, set cruise control, put the seat all the way back, stand up, and I would just sail the car all the way. Like, I would just stand up and just pilot the car. I was like, oh, okay.
That's hilarious.
I can't imagine, like, some guy walking his dog sees somebody do that. Like, what?
What is going on over there? I get you.
Being kids is fun.
Yeah.
But,
it was a good time back then.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we hit the hour mark, so I don't know if you want to keep going, but
I've got some stuff to do, but it's been good talking, and definitely thanks for having me on this podcast. It's been fun to talk about this stuff, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch. Thanks for talking, man.
Yeah, it's been a good one. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. As always, I want to say thank you to those who listen. I know we were off last week. Just had to handle some stuff. Got a good lineup coming up. That was Shay Trask. He's down in Florida. Again, thanks for listening. Catch us on SoundCloud and YouTube. So look forward to doing this some more, and drive safe.